19 years, 60 lakh units sold the world over, around 30 lakhs sold in India alone. The Suzuki Swift, or closer home, the Maruti Suzuki Swift, has been an iconic brand, but a brand that is also facing enormous competition from the SUV body types. The 2024 Maruti Suzuki, therefore, is trying to mount a counter-attack to not just its direct rivals, but its indirect rivals as well. What does the fourth generation Maruti Suzuki Swift bring to the Indian market, Indian roads, and most importantly, the Indian customers, you and me? You're watching HT Auto. I'm Shubhadeep Chakravarti, and we're in Bengaluru to find the answers to just that. The latest Swift is a generational update and not just a mere facelift. But that said, of course, even generational updates get a whole lot of exterior design updates, and the Swift does as well. Now, let me make it very clear that right from the third gen onwards, I have not really been a fan of the styling on the new Swift. And since the fourth gen design builds on the design of the third gen, some of my opinions continue. For example, the bumper has been updated, the grille has been updated, and the Swift continues to have a very pronounced circular rounded approach. In fact, there is a circular line running all around this car in a 360-degree manner, and it is slightly fresh, of course, but doesn't go well with the sporty character that the Swift is trying to portray itself for. But that said, the projector headlights have been updated, the DRL units have been updated, look very sharp, very sporty, very contemporary. The fog light units too have been updated. But my personal favorite are the updates at the back of the Swift, because the LED tail lights here look very, very smart when lit in dim light conditions and give this Swift a young, sporty appeal from the back. For the remaining part, you get a rear wiper on the top end version, you get an antenna on top, and of course, as you can clearly see, this car is in a dual tone shade. The Swift stands on 15-inch alloy wheels. The alloy design too has been updated. The cargo space inside the new Swift is at 265 litres. And while that may not be a lot for long journeys, it is still fairly deep to swallow in the weekend bags and suitcases. Step inside the latest Swift and let me remind you that this is the top of the line ZXi Plus variant, and there are feature additions inside this car. For example, the new big touchscreen has been plonked right in the middle of the dashboard. Now, this infotainment screen has been seen on some of the other newer Maruti Suzuki models as well, so there is essentially nothing unique about it. But the good part, of course, is that it still is fairly easy to master, fairly easy to understand, puts out all the information in a very legible manner, and is fairly responsive to touch, even though there is a fair degree of glare on the screen. The steering too is a familiar sight for those who drive a Maruti Suzuki. It's a flat bottom steering wheel with controls for audio mounted on the system itself. You also get controls for cruise control, and yes, the latest Swift now comes with cruise control as well. There's nothing spectacular about the cabin in terms of dashboard layout or design, because there is an all black theme with a little bit of grey inserts here and there on the dashboard as well as on the side doors. The black theme continues on the seat upholstery, and essentially the dark theme does two things: underlines the sporty credentials that the Swift is trying to portray for itself, and makes it really easy for owners to maintain this vehicle in Indian conditions. But of course, for a car in this segment, in this category, in this price bracket, what is expected is the use of a whole lot of hard plastics. We're not faulting the Swift for this, because it was expected and you do get a whole lot of it. In terms of storage space, there are adequate compartments for bottles on the center console here, on the side doors, so that's great. The feature list has also been updated with a wireless phone charger, but if your phone doesn't support wireless charging, then you get a conventional Type A charging point as well as a 12-volt charging socket and more charging ports at the back of the center console unit here. Now, this one is an automatic gearbox variant. The AMG comes on the Swift, and the stick is the primary highlight on the center console here, surrounded by a piano black finish. The parking handbrake is where it's supposed to be, but having driven Maruti Suzuki cars for years and years, I wish the storage space just under the lever gets some sort of cushioning, because over prolonged use, when you put car keys and cards and so on and so forth, this portion here tends to get scratched a bit too much. Now, to expect acres of space in the back seats of the Swift would be unfair to this car, and so keeping my expectations kind of low considering the overall proportions of the Swift, I'm actually pleasantly surprised because there is a decent amount of knee room here. The headroom is also fairly decent, and well, the seats are quite comfortable too. But on the flip side, legroom is limited, under thigh support is well scarce, and 3 passengers seated next to each other, especially if all 3 are adults, would be an extremely tight squeeze. There is a sense of claustrophobia in the back seats of the Swift, also because the windows remain quite small. There is no sunroof still on this model, and the center console juts back quite a lot to eat into the foot space of this vehicle. So the foot space for the middle passenger is very, very limited. Now, in terms of features that the Swift still misses out on, both in terms of convenience and comfort, I've already mentioned there is no sunroof still. There is no central armrest for the back seat passengers. There is no HUD. Remember, several Maruti Suzuki models are now offering the HUD. So that's not there still on the Swift. There is no 360-degree camera, although you have reverse camera, parking camera on the vehicle now. Now, these are some of the other features that Maruti Suzuki could have equipped the Swift with to better arm this car against its rivals. But having said that, safety actually gets a big thumbs up, because all variants of Swift, right from the base to this top version, now come with 6 airbags as standard. This, besides the other slew of safety features like ABS with EBD, hill hold control, and so on and so forth that the Swift now boasts of. But Maruti Suzuki is making a big claim about its all-new Z-Series petrol engine. What does that bring to the Swift, and how does it affect its drive character? It's time to get to perhaps the most crucial part of this review, the drive itself. Now, I've been a fan of the Swift ever since I first drove the 1.3-litre multi-jet diesel engine. 190 Newton meters of torque was just delicious. But no point crying over spilt milk. There is no diesel in the Maruti portfolio anymore. In fact, what you get on the 4th gen Swift is an updated 1.2-litre Z-Series petrol engine. Its main claim to fame is that it now has lower emission levels, and the mileage for both AMT as well as manual transmission version has actually improved. Now, the car that we're driving at the moment is the Swift with the AMT. And well, on this, the downgrade of power and torque is quite palpable. You can actually say that the Swift doesn't quite feel Swift anymore. The 3-cylinder engine is a downgrade, and while yes, it is good news for somebody who's extremely fuel economy conscious and prioritizes that over anything else, the Swift customer has essentially prioritized, well, drivability, swiftness, just the sheer fun drive dynamics that the Swift has always offered. What does that mean on the latest Swift? Well, it takes a bit of effort to get this particular car moving on the AMT version at least. The gear shifts require you to be a little patient, and when you're really pushing the throttle like you've always done in a Swift and like I am doing right now, I'm not sure how much of the engine groan is being picked up by my mic, but well, there is a certain groan and strain from the engine that's seeping into the cabin, and well, the Swift just seems a little reluctant to get a move on. Now, the good part though is that the handling of the Swift remains quite solid, quite steady, and well, quite sporty. So even when you're attacking turns and really pushing the Swift into corners, this car actually does handle itself in a very agile manner. Now, even speed breakers, because of the suspension setup being, well, tailor-made for Indian conditions, is relatively good. So most of the speed breakers for a car in this segment, the Swift handles remarkably well on all the 4 seats, all the 5 seats. On the flip side though, the seats are slightly narrow, the front 2 seats, and while they have some side cushioning on both the front seats, they just feel a little constricted, and right now that's exactly what I'm feeling while I'm driving this car. A key missing feature that often gets unnoticed till you're actually driving the automatic version is the missing armrest. When you're driving the AMT Swift on long distances, the missing armrest will be sorely missed. Now for anyone looking for more control on the AMT version, there are no paddle shifters behind the steering wheel. What you do get is the option to switch to manual for more control from the gear lever here itself. But frankly, it just adds slightly more flavor to an otherwise non-Swift like drive. Now, it is important for me here to underline that I'm comparing Swift to the Swift, and therefore it's not like this car isn't very exciting to drive. In fact, compared to some of its rivals, it can still actually hold its weight. But it's just a bit of a shame that compared to its predecessor, this one, well, seems to be a little bit of a dulled down version. Of course, there is the 5-speed manual transmission option that continues to exist on the Swift too. So come, let me tell you quickly what that transmission box has on offer. The Swift with the 5-speed manual transmission is a lot more familiar in terms of its drive trait. Is it excitable? Well, still not exactly. But is it far more drivable than the AMT version? Well, definitely. What helps this version of the vehicle is the fact that the gear throws are short, they're crisp, and they are precise. And of course, you have complete control over the 5-speed stick here at your disposal. What is also helping the gearbox in this particular version is a new clutch system. It's a hydraulic clutch, so it is fairly easy to use. It'll be easy on your left leg, and that can be a boon in start-stop traffic conditions, especially in Indian cities. So overall, of course, you get more control, and it is, like I said, a fairly familiar transmission option. But the big thing is that the engine still continues to groan when you really push pedal to the metal, and till around 2500 RPM mark, it takes still quite a fair bit of time to get going. Triple digit speeds do come along, and because you have complete control over the gearbox, you can decide on how you want to drive this car. If you want to really go aggressive, the mileage is going to take a hit, but if you just want to coast, then I'm pretty sure that the real world mileage figure of the Swift would be close to that 25 kmpl approximate that the company is claiming, especially on open highway stretches. The Swift has always been a no-nonsense, reliable car, and it still is, well, a rather no-frills car. Sure, there are certain feature updates. Sure, the safety quotient has definitely gone up. And sure, many of you would also appreciate the design updates on the outside. But there is no doubt that the 3-cylinder engine has dulled down the drive trait of this car significantly, especially in the AMT version. At 9.5 lakhs, even before the taxes kick in for the ZXi Plus with dual tone, the top-end version of the Swift is slightly expensive as well, especially if you compare it to some of its rivals. Now, who is the Swift meant for? Essentially, if you are someone who's driving a WagonR and wants to level up, then the Swift perhaps makes good sense. But my advice is, even within the Maruti Suzuki family, you have the mid variants of cars like the Baleno and the Fronx, which perhaps make better sense. What do you make of the new Swift from Maruti Suzuki? Do let us know. In this episode though, that's all the time we have. Thank you for watching.